Okay. Hello and welcome, everybody. This is the Credit Union Connection. I am your host, Sarah Snell Cooke. I'm here today with a man who needs no introduction, John Best. Welcome.
Hey, how are you? I don't know if I think I do need an introduction just because, you know, especially since I've shaved some of my beard off. I'm not sure people recognize me, but
Barely recognize you, right? Yeah. And John Best started Best Innovation Group years and years and years ago. John, why don't you give us a little background on yourself and your credit
sure,
union
sure.
ties
Yeah,
and
I was
describe
lucky enough to start in credit unions when I was very young. I was a teacher here in Florida at Hillsborough County schools and realized as much as I love teaching, it was the best job I ever had, that I couldn't really afford to raise kids on a teacher's salary. And so I have been also teaching at HCC at night, which is Hillsborough Community College. I was teaching, believe it or not, like WordPerfect, C++, things like
it.
that. And had a friend who was coming there to take classes on Novell. Novell. No, there are people who are going to watch this. I have no idea what I just said. But um, and he said, "Hey, we're hiring over at the credit union, and since you're a teacher, seems like that'd be a good fit. Who does technology?" And I said, "Sure." Didn't really know what the credit union was, to be honest with you. I just learned about it because I had a job where, or the teacher job, when I first filled out my forms, it said you could get this much every paycheck or this much, and one number was higher than the other. And I thought, this is an IQ test. Anybody that chooses the other one, they're not going to hire them. So I chose the bigger number. It turned out that was so it could spread out the payments all throughout the year. And so over summer, John got no paychecks, and that was not expected, and you couldn't change it. It was like that was not something I could go, oh, can I switch that back? And they were like, no. But they pointed me at Suncoast and they said, but you can get skips on your loans and other things, and that's where I kind of learned about it. So I went there. I was there for 5 years, went through a conversion, did a lot of stuff, Y2K, went on to GTE Federal Credit Union, where I was very fortunate. I've been blessed my whole career to work with incredible uh credit union luminaries like Bucky Sebastian, Tom Doherty, and even being introduced to people like Ed Callahan and all those folks. And from GTE, I went on to Westcom, where I worked with the great Rob Guilford and Darren Williams, and was there for 12 years. And finally, somewhere around there, I said, hey, I feel like there is a gap in the credit union space around innovation that I would love to fill because I just enjoy so much being creative around those things, particularly in services for members. So that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, no, very, very useful skills, obviously, at this stage of the game. And I love the innovative part, especially you were doing innovations before they were really called innovations, it seems like.
I used to just do things. I mean, it was funny because I remember one of my favorite moments was I used to like to go up to the call center and just hang out. And I like listening and then, seeing like, okay, I'm hearing over and over again, like what is things that are just really becoming, like are these people are answering the same question. One of them was Reg D.
Hmm.
People transfer just didn't understand why it wouldn't transfer. And so back then, since we wrote our own home banking, I just went home, spent a little while, and on the transfer screen, when you selected the savings account, it would show you how many transfers you had left. And voila, this call stopped once people could see. And I put the little link, and I actually linked it right out to the NCOA to explain what Reg D was, so
Hmm.
they knew it wasn't us. I love things like that. And I consider those innovations. I don't think it has to be some big technology gain to get. I mean, it's kind of a deficiency, but it also is. It was. I think those are innovations to make the not only the members' lives better, so they don't have to call and ask these questions like why, because they would get some wacky error. It would just say something like can't do it and pass through some core error that no member would ever understand. These were the early days.
Yeah.
And but then also the staff got some relief, and now that with all those conversations gone, you can have the next conversation, which may or may not be something that's like in that vein, but could be the get the next product, that life situation. That's what I love
Hmm.
about that sort of approach. And just try to it's kind of like crack. Once you do it once, you want to do it over and over and over again. And that's what I love to do. So
Are you speaking from experience?
on the crack, yeah, yeah, yeah. Really
Um,
addicted to crack for the Westcom years. Don't tell Darren. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, they probably would believe it, but no, no, no crack.
yeah,
No crack in
no,
my past.
I and I love the innovation for a practical purpose. Innovation is creativity and serving an actual practical purpose, not just being creative with things. Like all the damn buttons on my remote control on my
Yeah.
TV. It's like we're innovating, but nobody knows how to use it.
Right.
Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
so,
There's a lot of buttons, and it's funny because over time people have realized, hey, we don't need all these buttons.
mhm,
It's just interesting how features have evolved. I'm constantly impressed at sort of the continuing narrowing of technology with regard to sort of the human experience and how it connects, and you just keep finding more and more innovation in that space. I think it's really cool.
yeah, yeah, like we have a Fire Stick. A lot of people do, where you just voice control. We need to be able
Yeah.
to do banking that way.
Oh yeah, and they just announced a new Alexa
Mhm.
that looks like it's going to connect to some sort of model that they've realized that Google Home, Alexa, all those products are I mean, what was the Filene quote? To replace something that exists with something that's better, right?
Mhm.
And I loved my Alexa when I first got it, but now it just seems stupid. Like I keep wanting to
Right.
talk to it like it's Chat GPT or like it's a LLM, a large language model, but it's not. So,
Hmm.
but they just announced that, and because we were so early, we wrote a product in the aughts called Five, which was a financial interactive voice experience, which was using Alexa and that to just control. Because it turned out, who loved it? Seniors. Which,
Hmm.
if you think about it, less buttons, just talk to something. I mean, what's the most natural interface you have? So I just
And they
love
don't have
all of
to
that when
read.
it's in service of member service, I guess, is
Hmm.
like you're saying.
Yeah, and they don't have to read if their eyes are really bad and that kind of stuff. Yep.
Although you wouldn't want to like 12-day, history on your account read to you. We did this, there are certain things we discovered that the medium wasn't great for, but
Hmm. So, what do you think are the top innovations applicable for credit unions right now?
wow. The first one obviously is AI. And not to beat a dead horse, but uh Peter DeMontis, who I've got the privilege of getting to know a little bit, he says there's two types of companies in the future: those that embrace AI and the gone, right? And I like to use Kodak as that example. And they famously, the guy who invented digital pictures worked for them and
Hmm.
came in the room and said, "Look, I got it." And they said, "But that's going to kill all the little photo huts in the parking lot. And we sell film, not." They didn't realize they were in the. I always love when somebody says, they're not in the plane business. They're not in the moving people business. They're in the experience business on the other side, or and Kodak thought they were in the film business, and what were they really
Hmm.
were was in the memory business, and they just didn't
Hmm.
know that. So they missed that boat, as Blockbuster did too, famously. So I think that AI is another disruption that is going to be so strong and so powerful. But it also, in this case, we haven't seen, in my mind, a disruption like this because it has more than just, hey, the credit union needs to understand this and use it. It is going to disrupt people's lives. It is going to disrupt, and not the people we thought. Like, I think we all thought AI was going to take, robots were going to take people's textile work or whatever, which did happen. We've been through this before. But instead, it's like programmers and marketing and stuff, which so what does that look like? How does it integrate? And all the universal basic income stuff you hear or whatever happens, I don't know what it is, but I do know for a fact with what I've seen, this stuff is going to displace people. And the world's also going to go faster, and experiencing it, understanding it, and using it as fast as possible is going to be important. It doesn't mean go out buy the next shiny thing. It means start experimenting, start understanding, start leveraging experiential knowledge. That's the first one. Did you say three?
I
I
said
got
just
three.
top. I didn't say
Top.
any.
Okay.
Any number.
I think the second one, I'm gonna go crazy a little bit here. So I'm gonna go like way out. I'm not gonna talk about like, so AI is its own category. The next one is synthetic biological intelligence. So the use of they've now so they can now create stem cells from, they don't have to have a fetus to do it, which was always kind of a problem. Like, oh, this is great technology, you can cure cancer with it, but you got to kill a bunch of babies. That just seemed kind of
Wrong.
antithetical to the plan. We're all kind of pro baby. Nobody really wants to murder any babies. So the other option, they finally figured out to take either skin or blood and turn it into stem cells. and those stem cells could be converted to neurons. Now, this is very early technology, but what's happening is I see AI as a foundational technology that's making everything else go faster. Every engineer is now, I'd say, 5 times more effective if they're using AI. Every programmer is 5 programmers if they're using AI. So when you do that, it's economies of scale and everything speeds up behind it. So this technology is sped up quite a bit, but the idea of introducing neurons, and neurons are very different than silicon in the sense that, like you or I, we can sense weird things. Like we have, a human sense of things. And for fraud, this is going to be really important. So I think the idea that we're going to have to take a look at this kind of because we've been using neural networks forever, right? Neural networks have been built into our credit cards and other things to avoid fraud forever. It's the reason why you try to use your credit card at some gas station and it goes, yeah, you've never been here before and you shouldn't be in Tennessee. No soup for you, right? But that is quickly, because of AI raising the stakes in the fraud business, it's going to have to be defeated with something that has equal or better sort of intelligence. And so I think the synthetic biological intelligence piece is up and coming, and I think everything that you can think of is going to be faster than you think. Like everything that was predicted to happen 2050s, it's probably going to be a little closer to our lifetimes. Like I never thought in my lifetime I would see what I'm seeing every day with LLMs. I did not think it was possible. When that is a breakthrough, that the magnitude of it, it's hard to even express, in my opinion, based on my whole life of monitoring this stuff. So that's the second one, is this idea of, and by the way, these computers are cool, right? So you got to feed them. You got to literally give them nutrients and they poop. You got to do something with the poop. I'm not kidding. They're real things, right? And that's going to lead to a lot of weird stuff too. Like, do they have voting rights? I don't know. It's all creepy, but I can tell you right now, for fraud detection, this stuff is going to be through the roof because it's capable of determining anomalies out of patterns, which is all neural networking is doing, right? The problem is that the patterns become so expansive and the variables that go with it that it's hard to sort to separate it out to come up with the viable problems. And then the bad guys know that we do that and they discern those patterns pretty quickly and change them. We're going to have something, especially with AI, that evolves with that. So that's the second one. The third one is just quantum altogether. Quantum computing is going to change us end to end. First, and by the way, we're starting to see evidence that quantum computing, for those of you that don't know what that is, so quantum computing is a type of computing. It's hard to even explain that. Classical computing is sort of linear. It runs, like if you think of a maze, right? So if a classical computer goes to solve a maze, it will try to go all the different routes, and basically it'll take each one until it figures out where to go, right? So if this one didn't work, this one didn't work, this way didn't work, this way didn't work. Now, you can multi-thread it, you can have multiple computers work on it at once. But what if you could do it all at the same time? Like all at once in one thread. That's what quantum brings to the table. And what it's really, really, really good at right away is factoring super large prime numbers, which, by the way, all of our encryption is based on. So the day that quantum sort of hits, and it's called Q day, it's going to break a whole lot of encryption at credit unions and everywhere else. So much so that the government has already released documentation. NIST, the infrastructure group, has said you need to start shifting to this encryption because it's quantum resistant. So that's one thing quantum will bring, is advanced encryption. But you look at people like JP Morgan, who's invested in AI plus quantum. And to me, what it looks like they're doing is, imagine if you think of your entire credit union as a hard drive, right? Remember the old days of defragging a hard drive before we got all the solid state stuff, like, because basically it would say, all the Word documents will go over here, and we'll make it so that this file, the head doesn't have to read back and forth real fast, because over time it got messed up. Imagine if you could defrag your credit union, meaning that, for instance, this is just a crazy idea, but all payment dates pretty much are the first or the 15th. You kind of get a choice, right? Or the end of the month. But what if you could say, well, this member pays on this date based on our cash flow, this member pays on this date, and we could give this member, but figuring that out would be impossible for a classical computer, where there's an advantage and it'd be worth doing. But for a quantum computer, that's just nothing. That's just Tuesday. So these things are going to be really huge in the future. And they also bring with them quantum communication, which is really crazy, which is like the large amount of files that you can send. Because if you think about it, what we're doing right now is AI is just, we were already producing so much data every day that we couldn't even, no one could even mentally comprehend of the amount of data. Like you couldn't visualize it. It's beyond human comprehension. And now AI is greatly exponentially increase that output between videos, the pictures and images it can do, all the generative AI, all the text. It's increased that output, which means that like anything else, the roads that, if the cars are getting bigger, the road's got to be expanded, right? Or if there's more of them, you got to have more lanes. And so that's the other piece of quantum is sort of the quantum networking side, which I've been talking to a couple of big credit union players about, working on. I've actually been doing a bunch of work with Filene lately, and we've been talking about what it would take to sort of educate everybody in that. Because I'm not suggesting the whole purpose of like what big is not so much to find like the 2 year and the 3 year innovations, because I think those are pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious you got to dig into AI, but I don't know that they understand the extent and what it's going to take. Um,
Hmm.
but we're looking for the 7 to 10 year plays, because those are the things where you're going to start preparing the ship today to handle that. If you're going to have a quantum network, or for instance, quantum resistant, one of the great examples is, I tell people all the time, and we do this at Big, we can help you, is conducting, and you and I talked about this at the last, you were on the panel with me, and it was so awesome to see you there out in Phoenix when we did the CEO roundtable. And we told them, listen, you need to start looking at conducting a crypto inventory to understand all the crypto you have, so that when I say crypto, I don't mean cryptocurrency. I mean like your VPNs have a cryptology component to it. Your networks, your website, the little lock that's on on your website, all of that stuff has a cryptology component to it. So do the ATMs, they have cryptology that's connected to them, and data. So what is all that composed of, and is it all quantum resistant? Because the day this hits, all that stuff can just be seen. It's not even like hard to do. And it's an arms race right now, which is very interesting. So
Wow.
yeah, I think those are the three that if I was looking long term innovation wise, if I was in just wanted to look out there and kind of think about how will I succeed in the 2040s, the 2030s. I think that's the foundational layer of understanding, because over time, all of these things are going to come to pass. And that
And it's going to
includes
take a
things
moment.
like reduction in technology, like, with AR is going to be a big thing, but these are the underlying principles in the processing I think it's going to take to
Right.
get there.
And, it's going to take a while to get there for the credit union's infrastructure itself, too. And
Yeah, it
that's
doesn't turn on a
what.
dime, but it's not as big as, say, a bank's, right? I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
bank has a much, when they do something like this, they generally, break it off into little spaces. But a credit union, but the thing is, they have to know, and they have to start turning that
Hmm.
ship today because of resources and whatnot. And
And right
surely,
now, oh, go ahead.
good.
No, I was going to say right now, what people know of AI is generally Chat GPT, or, it might help me script call center or something like that, or respond. Um, what are the practical steps that credit unions can be taking like today to lay that foundation?
I think step one is education. I'm actually working on something right now. I'm planning on releasing sort of a credit union, both executive and staff level sort of educational little website that people could just go and watch, if you go, almost like what we used to have to do for bank secrecy, things like that. Not only to understand, say the ins and outs of it, but also just you need to have a rudimentary understanding of how it works, so that
Hmm.
it doesn't A, creep you out, and B, so that if put it this way, the really good ideas for AI and what it's capable of, once people understand what it's capable of, are not going to come from the people sitting in those exec seats. It's going to come
Hmm.
from the people who are putting fingers to keyboard, those workers, and them having a solid understanding of it is what's going to bring those efficiencies. And so teaching them, because the way it usually works is in credit unions is, we generally start hiring in younger blood, and that younger blood goes, hey, why are you still doing that? My phone does that, and they help to sort of to move it along. But now the pace is such that I don't even think that is going to help us keep up.
Hmm.
We are going to have to, it's finally come to a point where innovation is going to have to become a discipline within organizations. It can't just be sort of a side order of, well, we budgeted 50 grand, we'll buy some gadgets, see what happens. It's going to have to be a discipline in the sense of, okay, is this technology something real? Is it something we need to look at? And where do we categorize it in our ops? Where do we categorize it in, services, security, member services? And, have some sort of event horizon around what these things look like and whether or not the credit union can, engage in that. I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to go out and hire innovation people. That's why we exist, because the really cool thing about credit unions is they're collaborative. So
Hmm.
that's the one thing the banks don't have. They're not going to share innovations amongst each other, but we will. And so that's the
Hmm.
real power for us, our innovation club, which consists of 20 credit unions,
Hmm.
the filing group, those kinds of things, MDC. They bring great value, I think, in different ways to that concept, but that's how we evolve together. And it's always been that way. A lot of great inventions have come out of credit union, like a first home banking that was on the internet. That was Spooner out of First Tech. People don't realize that, but a lot of really cool stuff has happened in the credit union space because we are collaborative and because I think that we're, more member oriented.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely that last part, being more in touch with who you're actually serving. Um, and so you talked about this a bit ago, kind of mentioned it as a side, like some fries or something. But while all these things are AI, large language models, whatever, are developing for defeating or at least preventing um, fraud, the bad guys have it too.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
They're enabling it. And not only that, but state actors, which is pretty wild, right?
right.
You're seeing, and I just saw something today. Let me pull it up here. It was an article where people are being swatted. So that's where,
Mhm.
like, I decide I'm gonna be rude to Sarah and call them and call the SWAT team. So in this case, they're being swatted, and when they looked into it, they're using voice generators to do so.
Mhm.
That means an AI with a voice was able to dupe a 911 operator, and they believed, using that voice, that that person was in dire trouble, and they went into this guy's house. They broke into his room, because they think you're being murdered. And so,
Right.
but that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Voice cloning, and this is not technology that's the thing I think is so hard for people to grasp. You don't need to run AI. And I do this demonstration every time I speak I speak a lot for Ukrainians and different things. But one of my favorite demonstrations to do live, because I can't do it on the web, is to take my system and ask it a bunch of questions about things like string theory, stuff that, the average person would know, get all those answers, and then go watch this and turn off the internet and just completely disconnect this computer from anything and ask the same question and have it function. And my laptop is not some expensive magic, it's a MacBook Pro that's a couple years, I think it's 3 years old, but it can still run all of these things locally. And if I can do it, so can anyone, including
Hmm.
voice cloning. Voice cloning is not like something only the CIA and NSA, I think that's a lot of our thought process. This is technology that is now in the hands of kids. They've already had it happen at schools, calling in bomb threats, voice clone your parents and have them call you out of school. It's happening because these kids
Yeah.
can all play with this stuff and learn it and do it. So we want to hire those ones if we can turn them from the dark side, because they're going to be really valuable. So those are the
Yeah.
new nerds.
The new nerds. So with AI and um, these others kind of overshadowing, one that was a huge buzzword 5 years ago, I would say, was blockchain. And how is that? Where is that now? What's going on?
Oh, it's interesting because blockchain is one of those things that I think nothing's changed with blockchain. That's the weird thing. Nothing's changed.
Right.
It's still the same tech it was 5 years ago. Nothing has changed. What has changed is people's perception and understanding of it. It was just such a complex thing to understand that it feels like, and everybody was so hung up on cryptocurrency, so
Hmm.
hung up on Bitcoin and those sorts of things, that they did not see sort of the forest for the trees, in the sense that the technology was incredibly valuable the way it works. It was just a
Hmm.
breakthrough of ideas to have the ability to sort of do business with anyone without having to share that information, and to have it be a consensus-based mechanism, basically a democracy, sort of in a way that could deal with that. And I think that as of today, that time has come. But what's interesting is there is a place for AI in that space. Those two
Hmm.
technologies, I like to say, I am not a person that wants to like I don't want to create anything. I like to find things. I like to find peanut butter and I like to find chocolate. And I like to go, oh, these two things will go good together. AI and blockchain definitely have a really nice capability. If you think about it, one of the challenges of AI, just like a regular person is, they're only as good as what you teach it, right? So, for example, the big one is DeepSeek, right? We heard all about that, DeepSeek, and the Chinese company that sort of upended the market a couple months ago. But if you go ask DeepSeek something like, "Hey, tell me about Tiananmen Square," because it was created by the Chinese, it's going to go, "It was a beautiful day. Everyone loved it.
Yeah.
It was a great day for China," right? Where um, that's not necessarily the historical account of it, but that's what you're going to get from that. And there's a real danger, I think, because more and more people are stopping using Google or doing their research where they're just sort of leaning on these things, then the data they're being trained on, if it's biased, then it's going to give you biased information, right? What's the blockchain? The blockchain is a really cool thing in the sense that it is supposed to be an immutable ledger of truth, right?
Hmm.
So that means that when we put it in transaction sense, we can say this transaction happened, it for sure happened, this money changed hands, or whatever happened, and I can prove that because I have 100 billion other systems here that all saw the same thing. It's almost like a whole bunch of people watching something happen. What I
Hmm.
see happening is that the weights of these products, the weights is kind of the how you train a large language model is you use the weights of different neurons or knowledge bases to get that information. But those weights, I think, eventually will have to be stored in blockchain because the truth is becoming such a difficult commodity to discern. And so if there's going to be an arbiter of it, it's probably going to be something like a blockchain where this idea is put out there and says, okay, this is what happened, this is for sure the details of it, make of it what you will. You can read the details of Tiananmen Square and say this was a bad or a good thing, whatever it is you want to do, but this is the mutable truth of what happened. I think
Hmm.
blockchain could fill that gap for a lot of this knowledge.
Hmm.
And I think that's going to be really valuable. I think also as time goes on, uh, and AI gets better, particularly even in some of the stuff I just talked about, like running the AI models or training the AI models using the synthetic biologics, the brain matter, the neurons, because there's a power issue there too. There's another issue of resource, right? We're already seeing it. One of the big challenges was that DeepSeek out in China, they did what they did without access to the latest technology because we've prevented them from getting it. We won't allow NVIDIA to sell them our best stuff. NVIDIA being the company that makes the stuff that trains AIs. And
Hmm.
they still managed to build one that was as good as what we have. This is the theory using it's kind of like there's a great line in the first Iron Man where he's trying to make the same thing that he goes, Stark made one of those in a cave with a car battery or whatever. And that's kind of what they did. But necessity was the mother of invention. And because they didn't have access to those things, they streamlined a lot of this stuff. And almost everybody that's read their papers has come to the conclusion to say, yeah, this makes sense. And others are already incorporating it, and Anthropic and OpenAI. So imagine that as it scales out into the Cranian space, right? As power becomes a bigger issue, there's already cities in this country who are experiencing power issues because Google or Amazon or whoever has opened up some big training facility. They're actually putting in now many nuclear that nuclear power has kind of come back around. So all of these things have scaled that the world is changing now at a faster pace than I've ever seen it before, ever. And
Yeah.
keeping up with it is not about it's a lot of decision making, but it's also a lot of how flexible can I make my culture, my staff, and my services. to engage in this world. And unfortunately, we have a lot of rigidity in all of our systems, and I think that's something we're going to have to work out over time.
Hmm. And how has that worked out?
I
Replacement?
no, I think there's a lot of approaches to it, but my main approach is this. I like to think of culture. Culture is the biggest issue. And culture, I look at culture like if you dropped a pebble in the middle of a little puddle, right? When you see it radiate out all the little, it radiates out all the little waves from it. The strongest ones are closer to the center. Those are always really big, and they get weaker as they go out. I think that in the creating space, we have strong leadership. You know, you look at the leaders in the creating space, they're accessible. It's a very different model than, say, banks and other things where, like, like, and I think in some of these bigger banks, if you were a lone person, you just wanted to schedule a meeting with the CEO or something, I'd be like, yeah, that's not happening. But in a creating, that's a reasonable thing. You could get to that level and make yourself heard. And I think, no, it's a beautiful thing that within our culture. But I worry that it's that not happening enough to empower those people, to reduce the fear, to make sure that they know that you're on top of it from a regulatory standpoint, that you're doing all the things you need to do, so that they feel unencumbered to deploy these sorts of things, to think that way. And so I think that's the start. Is it starts with the top. Like if you're a CEO of the Cranium somewhere and you haven't used ChatGPT, shame on you. You got to try it. You need to be out there. You know, if you haven't bought some, I used to say this about crypto, even as I said, look, blockchain is not about crypto, not about the coin, but if you haven't gone out and bought some Bitcoin at this point, after 8 years, the thing survived, shame on you. So,
Hmm.
we have to go out and experience these things and then share it with the staff and share it with the group. I think that's a big play. And our first instinct, like what was the first instinct with AI? Shut it off. Don't
Hmm.
let anybody get access to it. And I sometimes think, well, is that a basis of our hiring? Are we so worried about our employees that we can't trust them to give them a tool? But that doesn't mean you just give them something carte blanche. But it also doesn't mean you can't lock up the candy. They'll eventually get into it and get the candy because they have phones. They don't even need you to do this. They can download it on
Hmm.
their phone and do it themselves. They can take a picture of the screen now and have it do it. I mean, it transcends everything that I've ever seen. And it's just going to get worse because I can think of more use cases because you've got all these great ingredients. It can now do vision, it can do audio. When you put all that stuff together, we're headed towards, and OpenAI is headed this way. We're headed towards you being able to hire a bank of AI agents, of AI people that are AI agents that you hire from some company and turn them loose on some task. It could be answering the phones. It could be, hey, we've been wanting to go through all of our, all of our, all the documents in our document imaging repository and clean that up or something. I mean, it's just going to be
Hmm.
pretty wild how it lays out.
Yeah. And hopefully we all keep up to date on everything, learning about that. I know I don't use it, but I do play around with it to make
I
sure.
you know what?
Well,
It's so funny when I first started in crayons and Google came out. I remember when it happened. After a little while, somehow I always wind up in charge, and that's because I'm the least objectionable person, not because I'm good at anything. It's just like, yeah, no one really hates John. Let's make him in charge of something, right? So, but one thing that would happen is a lot of the tech guys would come to me and they'd say, "Look, I'm stumped, man. I don't know where to go look." And back then, I used to help them, but then Google happened, and one of the things I think that I'm pretty good at that has helped me in my career is I'm really quick to embrace a tool that I think is valuable. So, like,
hmm.
for example, have you seen Perplexity AI?
No,
So you
I've
should
heard of
put
it, but
that
I have
in
not.
your
I'll
thing.
go put it
It's
on my list.
basically
Yep.
Google plus AI. Now, Google's headed that way. You get an AI response, but it's nothing like how Perplexity does it.
Okay.
Perplexity is a disruptor in the search space. So I would tell you that I use Perplexity now way more than I use Google. I would say I use it, I don't know, probably 80-20 over Google.
Hmm.
Um, but the thing is that after Google came about, when people would come to me and go, John, I'm stuck. And I go, did you Google it? And they go, okay, because I'm going to Google it. And if it shows up on the first 3 pages how to fix this, we're going to have a discussion because I'm not your Google. Right. I'll tell you once, but but it's hard it's not easy. I'm broken. I can adopt these things quickly. It's my ADHD. I just go, ooh, change, done. But some folks are very ingrained in what they do.
Hmm.
Getting people to understand that there's this new place that you can go for answers that is very different than what it was before. It's because they've already, I think by and large, our culture understands that you can get answers from the internet, but it's not that simple. It's go out to the internet, you got to figure out how to ask the question and then sort through a zillion links to figure out what's what. And maybe sometimes that isn't the most effective way to do things. Maybe there is, but with AI, especially an AI trained on, say, your credit union's operations, your credit union services, then that should probably be the first place you go to ask questions or do what you do, because it's going to have those answers, and it's not going to require you to, be on Jeopardy and phrase the answer in the form of a question or whatever to get the answer out of it. You can be pretty colloquial with it and get what you need out of it. So I think
Mhm.
that mindset has got to shift quite a bit.
All righty, sir. So we've covered everything, solved credit union's problems,
No, no,
and
we just created more.
just
But
created
in a
more.
good, well, we created more, but in a good way. They're good problems to have, right?
Right.
Being able to grow. Because if I'll leave you with this, here's my final thing. If you're out there and you're a CEO and you're watching this because you love Sarah, who doesn't? Your job, and I got this from Alan out of True West, the guy's brilliant. He said to me, John, I got to triple the size of this place in the next 5 years without adding any staff. And I think he crystallized it so well. And if you look at the things it's going to take to do that, it's going to take the culture shift. It's going to take embracing technology in the way we haven't before. We can't be as slow as to the take as we've been. Fast following is not a strategy. Um, and most importantly, it's going to take creativity. And the good news is our industry is chock full of it because collaboration breeds, creativity. So I
Mhm.
think we can do it.
Awesome. Well, I was going to ask you for the final thoughts, but you gave them. So there it is. Thank you so much for joining me today, John. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.